Hello and welcome. I'm Wendy.
I'm Nicola.
And together we're Corporate
Conundrums.
Conundrums. So welcome to those of you who are going to be phoning today. And we would just like to refer back to the previous podcast and thank Emma very much for contacting us afterwards and asking us in more detail to give us feedback on the funding, which we have caught up with her about. And we look forward to taking some different themes forward today.
And thank you to all those who've messaged us through our Facebook page, yes. facebook.com/corporate conundrum, or our YouTube channel, of course, where we've had some real good suggestions for future subjects.
Indeed.
And of course, people asking to join us on the call. So I know we've got a few people who are lined up for today.
Yeah, I think we've got 5 or 6 callers, so that will keep us busy.
So Wendy, I hear you've been in touch with Tanzania. What takes you to far off places?
Lucky me. Well, you know I do Humanology. Mm-hmm. So one of the quadrants, well, the primary and the first quadrant, leadership, and I've been fortunate enough to be asked to go out to do a 5-day high-impact leadership course in Tanzania. So I'm looking forward to it with a little bit of anxiety, just because there are things that run through my mind going to far places that I've not been to before, but looking forward to it. And what about you, Nicola? You were saying about stock control, and you had a meeting with some chap who had new software or something relating to the stock control. Tell us all a bit about that.
Well, I have a company called Organizational Elephant, and we sell Onnit's reusable dry white magnetic notes.
This is Nicola's second business, over and above her troubleshooting.
And right now, we actually stack everything in shelving.
Okay.
Stacks and stacks and stacks.
Yeah.
And it isn't really in a kind of a controlled stock management process.
Right.
And so it's okay as long as we have lots of stock, then we can always fulfill all the orders. But I'd like to be in a much more advanced position. So we consulted with KM Soft, who've developed this new software that they can really tailor to our needs, because we've got a lot of raw materials and a lot of finished stock ready to go out the door. And I was really just consulting how is the best way to do that whilst remaining efficient, because I don't want to be spending hours with the people in the warehouse scanning things individually and it taking more time than it does just now. But at the same time, I actually have heard a shocking statistic that businesses can actually have like £50,000 worth of stock hidden that they didn't really know they had.
Oh,
you imagine if you could really liberate that and the savings that you could make in your business. Now, we're not at that level, but I'd like to make sure we never become in that position.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's been an exciting time.
Nicola's in a fortunate position because she's done so much business troubleshooting. She doesn't need to troubleshoot in her own business because she's putting the foundations in place before she actually grows. So you're in a lucky situation having all the tools and meeting the people you do that can collaborate with you and hopefully take you in a direction that will skyrocket Nicola's other business to success.
So I think we'll kick off with some calls, shall we?
Good stuff. That would be great.
And we've got our first caller on the line. I believe that's Louise. Hello, Louise. Welcome to Corporate Conundrums. How can we help you?
Hi. I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
I've been watching your show, and I think that you both present just so eloquently, and you're absolutely naturals in front of the camera. I'm really impressed.
Thank you. That's lovely to hear.
And your conversation and advice just flows. But often when I watch others use a lot of filler words, so like is or it's like that or or and I recognise that maybe I'm not as natural in front of the camera, and I've observed that I often use a lot of filler words too. So I just wonder what advice you would give me for better flow, and maybe also just some confidence tips for being in front of the camera.
Okay. Is it Louise? Louise, is that correct?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, Louise. Yeah, well, this is probably my bag, my main area. I work in communication and in presentation, and I think if we start primarily with the confidence aspect, I think when you're speaking in front of a camera, you want to initially know that you're going in front of the camera with bags of confidence. And I usually give people body language tips, before they actually go in front of a camera or in front of an audience to present. And there's a TED talk. Amy Cuddy does an amazing TED talk on how you can increase your confidence via power posing and via changing your body language, so that when you then go in front of the camera, in front of an audience, etc., you feel in a very different headspace and you feel quite grounded and present to being confident and feeling that air of sort of authority prior to presenting. So that would be my first port of call, Louise, to, before you actually do anything, to put yourself in a state by changing your body language, by power posing and making yourself feel very big. It actually has an effect on testosterone in your body. They've done research into it, and it changes testosterone after about 2 minutes of posing and gives you that sudden feeling of being much more confident. So that's one thing I would recommend. Yes, indeed, Nicola. Anything you want to add?
Well, I think when it comes to thinking in a head, for me, it's about standing up. I sometimes find when I'm sitting down that I can become quite kind of insular and pensive. Yeah. Whereas if I'm up and I'm standing, so for me, standing up and walking around and maybe lifting my head is something that gives me inner confidence.
However, we're sitting today.
We are.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. The more space you occupy with your body, the more confident you are. So I'm not going to go into great detail about body language and the evolution of it, but basically the bigger you are and the more space you occupy, the more confident you come across. And then with regard to language and speaking, I think primarily we don't like silence and we feel uncomfortable if there's silence. And as a result, we fill the gaps with like that. And that in itself depletes from the quality of the conversation. So taking breath, having silence, and not being afraid of speaking slower and being mindful of what you're going to say before you say it. So very often we converse in a knee-jerk fashion. So we blurt things out without necessarily just taking that bit of time to be mindful of what's coming out of our mouth, and also perhaps what we want as a result of the conversation or the presentation, Louise. Is that helpful?
Yeah, definitely, really helpful. I really like the advice that you gave around building the confidence first and power posing. I've done a bit of that in the past, so I know that it does actually work.
Oh, good.
And I also like the fact that, you know, you're talking about how the body language is everything, and the idea of slowing down what you're saying makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yes.
Because then not thinking and you know, using those filler words as your brain is sort of trying to catch up with what you're saying.
Yes. So
that's been really particularly helpful, actually.
And one other thing,
I think that you're right.
One other thing I would say, Louise, I'm very conscious now of what I'm saying and when I'm saying it. But one other thing I would offer is, when you're speaking and when you're using language, we have a tendency of using what I call stop and block words. I use a traffic light system in language. So I use green for words which move a conversation forward and which empower others to listen and be engaged. And I use orange and amber light for words which are cautionary words. So perhaps maybe if these sort of tentative words, and then block words would be no, no, can't, shouldn't, all the words which stop conversation moving forward. So thinking about the quality of the word choice and the language that we have when we present, when we communicate, is crucial to that positivity and that engagement, and an audience feeling that they want to really engage with you. Yeah.
Of course.
So some really good.
The other filler word that I use quite a lot is I don't know if this is maybe a Scottish thing, but I use the word like.
In what context? In context, if you could
like I'm actually just about to say now. So I use the word like. So I'll describe something and I'll say, you know, like, or yeah, I use the word like quite a lot. I'm aware of that as well, and it doesn't actually really mean anything. So I think that you're right, that maybe those words, those filler words, they're called filler words for a reason, because they're filling a space, whereas if you just slow down and be more comfortable with the silence and you take time to really think about what you're going to say next. So that's really, really useful to me. Thank you.
Great. Well, that was very good of you to call into Corporate Conundrums, and we hope that the next presentation you do, you'll excel in it. And please
fantastic. Thank you.
Feedback to us, Louise. We would love to hear how you get on.
Sure, I will do. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Bye for now. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
So that was interesting, Nicola. Have you done much presenting? Where have you been with your public speaking and your presenting?
I just have horrible memories of my first time ever having to present, and it was on a subject like representing a department, and it wasn't really a subject that I was an expert in. And having to go up with a slide pack and stand up the front and try and remember what the next slide was going to say, and not really living and believing it. And I think for me, a lot of it is about really talking about something you really know about.
Or you're passionate about.
But whenever you're talking about something that somebody's told you to talk about, then you're trying to remember it, you don't feel quite as secure in the subject.
Yeah, and I definitely, it's all about that feeling of confidence and enthusiasm and passion, because that's what radiates across, and the mind-body. You can change mentally if you're feeling a bit sort of introverted and what's the word I'm looking for? Scared, apprehensive. You can change that by changing your body language, and I find it quite fascinating that not many people think about changing how they walk, how they move, and what they offer via their physicality.
It's a bit like fake it till you make it.
It is.
So you have to.
Yes, indeed.
If you don't feel confident, imagine what somebody who does look confident looks like, and then embody that, and then hopefully that would.
No, it changes. It changes your mindset. The hardwiring between mind and body is phenomenal, but it's not utilized very much. Anyway, I think we've got our next question coming in. I think it's Kevin.
Hello, Kevin. Welcome to Corporate Conundrums. What conundrum can we help you with today?
Yes, I wonder if you can. So I've been around for more years than I do care to mention. And I've just joined another blue chip international organization. And there's one question that does keep coming back to me over and over again. And it's around how do I develop inter-team relationships with teams from different functions within a business? So the teams that I work with, they do share ultimate corporate strategy, but they do have different objectives on a day-to-day basis. So where this goes, it invariably leads to conflict and very much an us and them mentality. Have you guys got any thoughts on this at all?
Well, Kevin, I think you've described something that we all experience, literally from being a child in a playground to joining our first job in a company, then to even in the bigger corporations and the smaller teams. As soon as you have a thing called a team, it isolates people from other teams. You see it in sports as well as in business. And for me, this is something that really needs to be tackled at the heart of a company, and it's a cultural issue, but also just something that people need to recognize the wider good. And I always come back to the motorsport analogy of, you can be really good at changing a wheel, but if somebody else can't get the car lifted up onto the jack, then you need to recognize that the two of you need to work together to get that car out of the pits. But I think when it comes to breaking down barriers, there's so many opportunities in a practical sense that we can implement. We were saying, Wendy, that there's not a number of organizational structures, isn't there?
Yes, Kevin, something I was considering as you were speaking was very often within a team, people get a mindset that that team is the be all and end all of what they do, and they don't necessarily have a handle on actually what other department teams do, because they've never been offered any information, or there's never been any relationship building between the other team. And perhaps you could do a day where, or there could be within every month, one day a week, people move from team to team to experience a time within another team structure and get an idea of how that team works. and how together the individual departmental teams all fit within the jigsaw puzzle to meet the corporate vision and the corporate values. I think very often people within each individual team don't understand the overall picture of an organization and where it's wanting to go to, or what the values and vision of the future are for that organization. So maybe moving from one team to another might be something that could help that situation.
Because I'd really like to see an organization that sells the brand of one team as its whole company. So whether you've got 5 people or 5,000 people in an organization, that it's welcome to the organization team. Whereas when we start in a company, we tend to immediately join a department, and we might go on some training courses about data protection or how to deal with an unhappy customer. But we don't tend to be immersed in a single team culture. We tend to be immersed in a department culture, and that spending time within other departments, I think, really would help build on that.
It just gives an opportunity for people within one micro team to understand the bigger picture, I think. And the more siloed teams become, the more difficult it is to actually get out of that framework of what they are working in that headspace all the time, day in, day out. And I think understanding the bigger picture is vital.
Kevin, do you find that this is an issue across all the teams, or is it perhaps specific pockets?
Yeah, I've just literally joined about 7 or 8 weeks ago, so it's the pockets that I'm observing. But what I am finding is that sometimes the larger and the bigger the organisation, sometimes the more siloed teams then become. But I do love that bit around, from a cultural perspective, around the brand of one team within an organisation. Yeah, we brand teams within departments, you're absolutely right, but not one team within the overall organisation, which I think is great. It's a great point.
Absolutely. Has that been of help, Kevin?
Yes, it has. Yeah, I love the interdepartmental moving around and getting sort of line of sight between different teams within different parts of the business. I think that's a great help.
It's a fairly big question, and maybe at some point in the future we could take the question and develop our thoughts
more like a deep dive, really.
Yes, like a deep dive. It might be something we could look at doing if you have time over the next few weeks. We might think about actually developing the thought process behind that in a little bit more detail.
Because I think
well, I know one thing for sure, that this question isn't in isolation to me, myself alone, so I'm sure it's wide and varied across a number of people, across a number of different organisations.
Yes. Okay, well, we'll maybe come back to you on that, Kevin, if you've got the time, and we'll explore it more. But thank you very much for calling Corporate Conundrums, and we look forward to perhaps speaking to you again and looking at the subject in a little bit more detail.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Nicola.
Okay.
Thanks for calling.
Many thanks, Kevin.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Very big topic.
Yes.
My goodness.
Yes, it's quite a difficult thing to answer within a short space of time, because certainly in the size of organisation he's talking about, it's obviously quite from the roots upwards. It's not really been embedded in the culture of how they actually work and how they sustain within each team.
Well, we talk about managing directors or the board or people being leaders, but very rarely do they actually end up in a leadership position. They're behind closed doors, and I think we lose the value of that leadership. People, wherever you are in the organisation, you are generally looking for guidance from above. And when your leadership team is relatively invisible, then you're not really seeing that. And just a little, embedding and I guess even training sometimes of the leadership team can really help embody values and behaviours that then can cascade throughout the organisation. Whereas we tend to focus on training somebody in this department here in how to communicate in this department here.
I think it's understanding the organisations made up of multifactorial teams, which are all part of one big team, and working in that basis. And it may be that the team leaders or the people above the team leaders that Kevin was specifically mentioning need to be more visible and need to move from team to team and spread the word of what each team is doing and how the successes that they're having within each team as well. So there's more just we've talked about communication, and we have a great gift of communication, but we're not always that great at using it.
So I think we've got another caller on the line. It's another Louise, actually.
Oh, right. Two Louises.
Two Louises.
Yeah.
Hello, Louise. Thank you for calling Corporate Conundrums. How can we help you today?
Oh, hi, Wendy. Hi, Nicola. It's Louise here from Graham Pest Control.
Hello, Louise.
Morning, Louise.
Hi. My question for you today is, do you have any ideas for better engaging with our remote employees?
I wonder, Louise, can you tell me a bit about the sort of structure of, when you say remote employees, are these sales teams? Are they implementation teams? What are they scattered?
No, they're service technicians, so we cover the whole of Scotland. We've got our head offices in Blairgowrie, but we have a good number of technicians that leave their house, get out in their van, and spend the whole day visiting customers within their territory. So they find it quite difficult to feel connected to our head office in Blairgowrie. And I'm just wondering how we can make them feel more connected to us when we've got the difficulty of location up against us.
Okay. Louise, can I ask, how frequently do your field sales teams get together for meetings or cross-fertilization of ideas? How often does that happen, or does it happen at all?
It does. Formally, we try and have 3 company meetings per year. We always have the annual company conference in January, and it just depends how busy we are, whether we get the April and October ones through. But we try and get them all together for a formal meeting. And socially, we try and get the whole company together twice a year, once at Christmas time, with their partners as well. And in the summer, we always have an event. And in previous years, it's been things like a sports day where Friday afternoon we get together and do team challenges. This year, because we've got a number of staff celebrating big birthdays, we're just having a big birthday bash, we're calling it, and it's a barbecue and just a social get together.
Okay.
So we always offer for remote employees an overnight stay, which the company pays for, so they do take place in that, but it's more on the sort of daily, weekly, monthly kind of day-to-day working, how we can make them feel more involved and connected with the head office.
Yes, and with regard to that, Louise, do the teams themselves, rather than on a corporate process, rather than being a corporate get-together, do the teams themselves have regular meetings, I don't know, monthly or every couple of months, discussing where they're at and what they're doing? Does that happen?
Yep. They all have a service manager, and the service manager looks after about 5 staff within the territory. So you've got like the Highlands and the Central Belt.
Yeah.
And I think that's one area where we could possibly encourage them to do more of that. They should be phoning them every morning and touching base with them, seeing what their daily workload is like, seeing where they're needing a hand, or, things like that. But if you have any ideas for how their service managers within their territories can enhance the sort of employee engagement on their side, I think that would be the way for us to go.
Yes. Well, I would definitely suggest that the service managers need to have almost a hub or a group, a regular meeting together, be it virtual or in reality, where they discuss what they're doing and their best results of what's happening with their team. I think there's a bit of a disconnect. It sounds like to me there's a disconnect, because the demographics have created, if you like, just the employees themselves being isolated, but also the teams being isolated. And bringing that together is crucial. So firstly, my thought process would be to have some sort of more formal team, sorry, what did you call the area managers? Was it some
service managers? Yeah.
Apologies. Some sort of regular meeting that the service managers have, Probably.
What sort of frequency would you say would be healthy?
I would definitely no less than monthly.
Okay.
It's interesting because I'm thinking, Louise, that a lot of, traditionally people put in place these formal meetings, but they become a negative experience because they're like, why am I doing this? I'm not getting any benefit. So the real key, rather than being the frequency of the meetings, is actually the content of the meeting. And even if that content is nothing to do with work, it could be, it actually doesn't have to be. What we're looking for is to people to feel the need to want to spend time and exchange information and ideas with other people within their team.
Yes.
So for me, even the basics of a WhatsApp group can actually help build up that sort of foundation for people on a day-to-day basis. So it's encouraging them to bring, I would encourage them to bring, what is it I've learned over the last week or month since the last meeting? What have I learned that I feel that other people in this room would benefit from? And what are the problems I'm facing that I would like some help from the other people in this room from? Rather than the update of, I saw 5 customers and I've managed to identify these risks, and whatever the formal stuff is that tends to keep people in their silos and they switch off or even check their own phone whilst others are speaking.
It's twofold though, Louise. It's more engagement with the service managers and their team, and more engagement with the service managers as a team. So it's ensuring that there's a connect or more of a connection on a regular, definitely no less than monthly basis. I would recommend the service managers have a virtual meeting. Ideally, I mean, being in the area I work in, I would ideally say better to have an interface, video interface, use, Zoom or Skype, or whatever, where they're getting together from whatever area they're in. But more than that, more connection between the team lead, the service managers and their team. And then lastly but not least, ensuring that the team also have an opportunity more regularly to meet, either socially or not socially. And that can be difficult because of the demographics. But what you're doing at the moment with regard to the corporate meets, I think is definitely going to help with that. But it's making people feel like they're part of a jigsaw puzzle and they're not just an isolated piece that doesn't fit into the picture. And also allowing the teams to understand the vision and the values of what the company's doing and how well it's doing, and feeding that through a communication process, an intranet or whatever. Some people I've heard use, like a pegboard, but it's a virtual pegboard where they'll put things that they've done well up on the virtual pegboard, and everybody sees that, and there's a celebration of that. People feel very much part of that, that celebration and that sort of, oh, that's great. We as a company are doing really well, and I'm part of that organization. Is that helpful?
It's very helpful, yes. And I think one of the things we've always had come back to us is just the time factor. If we say to the technicians, can you maybe thought the service managers meeting with their technicians in a kind of central base, whether it be a McDonald's or a roadside cafe or something, just to have a kind of very loose chat and get together and see what challenges they're up against. But I think we were kind of feeling that if they get that, they'll actually then go away and be more productive, that it will counterbalance the time that they've taken out to do that.
Yes. I think there is this belief that spending time having meetings like that are not worthwhile, and they're not time. It's not an effective use of time. I would completely disagree with that. I think it's very, very crucial to feel part of an organization. There needs to be that camaraderie and that interaction and that feeling that somebody's wanting to take an interest in what you're doing, and that whether or not there are issues or problems. I know I'm talking a lot. I'll pass over to Nicola.
Well, I was actually just thinking of a technique which I've seen done within IT development firms, and it may, because a lot of those people are remotely located, and it may work for you. Something to consider is if perhaps you find your staff spend a certain amount of time each week or each month doing paperwork, that what you can do is they can just join a Skype call, but it's a video Skype, but they're not there to specifically talk about anything. It's like having a virtual colleague within your room, and you're getting on with your own work, but the colleague is there on the screen, and you might just say, oh, I'm going to get a coffee now, and you go get your coffee and they get theirs.
Okay.
Or you might actually have a technical query. It can be all sorts of things, but it's more just the principle of having a remote colleague. You're not now sitting down for the hour to then have a meeting. It's more just they're on, a bit like having a TV program on in the background, but it's actually somebody that matters to you. It's one of your team members, and it might be something that might work for your home-based people.
Yeah, and it can be a very lonely job if you're a technician out on the road. So that would help.
But I definitely, the communication aspect of going, having the meetings way forward, I would suggest.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Well, keep us posted with how you get on with that, Louise. I really look forward to hearing, because I think a lot of other people will learn from the experience that you go through.
Will do.
Isolated. Thank you very much for your call.
Thanks, Louise.
Okay, lovely. Nice to speak to you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
It's so refreshing to hear a company who's completely embracing getting people to work together, getting people in the room. The number of events that they're doing at Louise's company is way beyond what a lot of much larger companies with even bigger budgets would do. So they've really embraced it. It just sounds like there's an extra bit that they perhaps not focus on.
It sounds almost like they've had quite a big growth splurge. You know, they've grown from the grievance pest control is a family business, so they've grown from quite a small family business to quite a big business in a short space of time, and getting the reins of that right now is crucial, because otherwise, as you say, in the big organizations, it just gets lost. That communication and that feeling like you're part of an organization, small or big.
There was an element similar there. I was thinking to a call we had last week. Do you remember we had the person who has had a challenge with the sales teams that are all based remotely, but they're trying to get the best out of each person?
Or learn from each other's ideas. Yes,
exactly.
Yes,
and that, whilst very different in its symptom, is probably a similar cause. Which is about getting people together, understanding the value that they bring to a team, how they can help other people, and spending time together, learning about each other.
I think technology has allowed us to be much more virtual in the way in which we work, and much more isolated. Days gone by, you wouldn't have that situation where there was people all over the country, because we tended to work within one unit in years ago. And it's acknowledging that alongside that ability of being able to work in different demographics, how you can still feel like you're almost in one area, and that it's same as in office workers, flexi time, home workers, the same sort of things will occur. It's a crucial component of ensuring that people feel valued in that organization when they're at home, to keep that communication going and keep the feeling that they're part of something. Yep.
Hello, Beverly. Thank you for calling Corporate Conundrums. How can we help you today?
Yes, hi there. Thanks for letting me join your podcast. My name's Beverly, and I have, for most of my career, worked in the civil service. I do that part-time. And in 2015, having done a bit of sort of voluntary work with charities in coaching and mentoring, the opportunity came to start to do that on a paid basis. So I set up my company, Kirkmillan, around that time, and I've been doing some fairly ad hoc coaching and mentoring work, primarily in the third sector, helping them to think about governance and about good strategic planning, and also do quite a lot of work in helping social enterprises and charities to access sources of funding.
Okay.
And I guess my conundrum is, at what point do I know that it's right to take the brave step and cut my ties with my kind of paid job and switch over to the thing that essentially is a bit of a hobby at the moment, but something that I really enjoy. And my concern is that if I go into my consultancy full time, that it will become more like the day job, and I probably might not enjoy it as much. I suppose I was just interested to know what your thoughts were about at what point do you get to that tipping point where you just know it's right to make the brave move and go for it full time.
Interesting. Well, obviously both Nicola and me are self-employed, so we've made that jump. And it takes me back, Beverly, to when I jumped, and it did feel like a jump. I was employed up till about the age of 22, so I've been self-employed for a number of years now, not going to put any specific number on it. And I remember that feeling of, should I go self-employed and start up myself, or should I stay with the comfort blanket of being employed? And for me, it was about the money side of things. You know, if I go self-employed, there's no guarantee I'll have a monthly income. But my passion and my personal reason for being my own boss and directing myself in the way I wanted to go in my career was a greater factor for me to make the move, rather than the security of knowing that I had a monthly income. But I do remember it was a sort of a gut feeling for me that the time was right. I just felt I didn't need the support personally of being employed, and I've not ever regretted moving into the area of being self-employed and then directing whatever I wanted to do in my career and directing my passions in the way I wanted to go. And I think what you said a minute ago with regard to the fact that you really enjoy it and it's a passion to do coaching, if you then take it as an employment, does that change? In my experience, it doesn't. All that it means is that you then become more enthusiastic and give more energy to what your passion is within your self-employed situation. That would be what I would say.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one, because I think you touched on it there about money and risk. It's risk versus reward, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I know that for myself, the day I decided to go self-employed, I think we covered about 24, 25, I met a person. I drove out the driveway and saw a neighbour, and I told them what I decided to do, and he went, "Oh my gosh, go straight back and ask for your job back." I was working for the Royal Bank of Scotland at the time. "Go straight back, Nicola. Worst decision I ever made." And I found that he was giving me his insight, but in many ways it was his own fears that were being reflected in that experience. And I came away thinking, oh my goodness, I was really worried about it. And then later on in the day, I was very fortunate to meet somebody else who also had gone independent many years previous. And they were like, "You go for it. It's wonderful. I love the freedom. I love the ability to choose who I work with. And I don't work for anybody." And so I found that, gosh, this is a dangerous situation to be in, because listening to other people round about me, I could be influenced one way or the other, but mainly not because of what was best for me, but for what worked best in their world.
Yes.
And so my starting point would be to become more exposed to people who are working self-employed, so that you can get a better balance of viewpoints from how individuals have managed it and how they've handled the challenge of going from self-employed to or employed to self-employed. And of course, some people actually go back to being employed.
Yes.
But there's something, it has to be something that inside you, I think, is right. When it came to for me with my management consultancy, I've done that for 20 years, but I also always wanted to have a different business, to be able to sell widgets, to do something. And it took me about 2 years to finally make that decision to do it. And I often found myself reflecting, as you are, is it the right time or not? And what I would say was the right time came about when it suddenly just felt like the right time. I don't know, I just woke up in the morning, and for me, the circumstances were there. And I wonder if it was to do with having weighed up that risk versus reward and said, this is what's important. What's important to me?
What's important to me and what's important in my life. Beverly, what can I ask? Your conundrum is whether or not to make the jump, or I call it a jump, or the move. What are the things that are holding you at the moment? What is anchoring you to the idea that you may, the idea of staying employed is a safer, or it may be a safer thing at the moment? What's the main?
I suppose, well, there's a couple of things. I mean, firstly, obviously the benefits that I have in terms of a secure job with, a good pension and lots of benefits, lots of flexibility. I enjoy that job that I do in the government. And I guess there is always this fear that as well on the other side, that nobody will want to employ me, and that, there's a lot of competition out there, and, what happens if, as you say, I can't pay the bills? What happens if, the income just doesn't come in? So it's things. And at the moment, I'm kind of got the best of both worlds, and it feels a bit, I feel that's not sustainable, probably, because I think I'm increasingly getting frustrated with the day job, although I enjoy it. And I think I can see this future, which is, increasingly doing more and more of the other stuff. And the more I do, as you said, I mean, the more I love, I just, it really, really motivates me.
Yeah.
So much more energy when I'm doing
what you enjoy.
That I don't get paid for.
Passion is. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to, in your own mind, equate, does the passion and the enthusiasm and the real drive for what you want and where you want your life to go, is that being in that place of coaching and being self-employed, or are you more comfortable in the situation that you're in at the moment? By the sound of the way you're describing it, I certainly know the direction I would advise, but that's for your decision in the long term. And the fact that you're contemplating it does tend to suggest you're the sort of person that would be more than capable of forging ahead in the sphere that you enjoy and that area of coaching.
I mean, I've got a lot of support locally from my local business gateway. They've been fantastic at bringing me in to network events, and I'm taking part in their digital boost program, and I'm getting some great support there. And I guess my sense is that I'm on this journey very incrementally. I'm building up my network and my contacts and my profile. And as you say, eventually it will, I hope, just feel like, right, this is it now. This is the moment. And it's feeling closer now than it did, say, a year ago.
You'll always, I think, remain with a little bit of that, I hope it's going to be okay. Being self-employed and being an entrepreneur, you're constantly responsible for your own journey, and within that there is always this, what's next month or what's the month after. It doesn't go away, but if you're happy to balance that with the passion and the freedom of being your own boss, then that for me was the equation that worked. That freedom, that passion, that enthusiasm directing my own life way outweighed the insecurity of wondering whether or not will I or won't I have money coming in at the end of the month. I think you can always find a way forward with the financial aspects, if you're going in the right direction for your enthusiasm.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of people that have done this journey have said to me that in advance of making the leap, they kind of started to make some financial provision and set aside, a kind of like a kind of fund that they could kind of fall back on. So they had a bit of flexibility in terms of that income stream. Is that something you would recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. But also remember, Beverly, that there's no negative in that you could go back to being employed again. If it doesn't work, you can always get a job. It's not like once you've moved to being self-employed, there's no way back, as Nicola said.
And ironically, of course, within the civil service, you can actually take a career break.
Yes.
I could actually take a break for a couple of years and, to try and explore whether this is going to work. And then, if it wasn't working, I could literally walk back into my old job or into the current job.
Oh, well, there's your answer.
Well, I know. I'm just thinking that through as I'm talking
There's
to
your
you.
answer. Yeah, I mean, you've got a very good opportunity there with security of allowing you to take that first step and go the direction that you feel where your passion is, and the options are, if it doesn't end up the way you want it to, you can revert back to where you are now. So you've got a perfect situation.
Let's talk about the money side, I think, for a second, because I think general best practice advice for anybody, even when you are employed, is to have a kind of a 3-month cushion.
Mm-hmm.
It's a challenge to get that, and I have to say it's not necessarily an area I'm particularly strong in, but the people would always advise that, because of course nowadays being permanently employed, for a lot of people, they're no less secure, no more secure than if they were self-employed.
No,
so for other people out there, having a cushion is generally a good idea. To have this secondment or career break idea is a wonderful one. What I'd also say is when it comes to business planning, and of course we're talking to people like Business Gateway or anybody who's asking, what's your plans for the business, then naturally your plans are to have lots of customers who spend lots of money and it all happens tomorrow. And it's worth saying, we'll forecast and then half it or even quarter it to get started. Because for a lot of businesses, the real challenge is getting in front of the real customer who's prepared to pay today. And that curve takes quite a long time. My experience in both my companies has been that curve takes quite a while. But then, often the first year and even potentially year 2 is about survival, getting the word out there, demonstrating your skills, demonstrating what your business can add value to, and you do pick up bits of business, but to have that regular income, it is quite a challenge. But of course, once you get beyond that investment then starts to reap its rewards later down. So it's a bit of a journey, that sometimes when we make the jump, we actually aim to swap the £1,000 we earned last month to £1,000 we earned this month, and that is quite a challenge. Something else to consider as a bit of a backup plan potentially in your middle is to look at the contract market. So you could become self-employed and do the individual engagements of what you've been talking about with business planning, I know you were saying it, and strategy, helping, coaching and working with the social enterprise, but also perhaps picking up associate work, for X days a week that may give you an element of stability, but at the same time you're still free to say to them, I'm going to be finishing with you next month because my business is now taken off.
Yeah.
You're at an exciting juncture, I think.
Yeah, I hope so.
Beverly, can I ask how you found out about Corporate Conundrums?
I found out through my Business Gateway.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. Well, we hope that along with Business Gateway, we've been able to assist you, and we look forward to hearing about your journey and whether or not you take that leap. But it does sound like you're in a great situation and an exciting future ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling.
Thanks,
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. I remember it well.
Yes, it's like yesterday, isn't it, when somebody tells you that story? Like, oh my gosh, yes.
It seems like it was yesterday, and yet it was an awfully long time ago. And I also, what's so salient is what you said about the expectation that you leave one secured employment job and you suddenly think you're going to be in the same situation, but you never are. It's troughs and peaks all the time, and I think in today's climate, it's a little bit like employed as well, because there's no securities. I would love to think that I was, never having to think money, but you do. It's a balance. But my being self-employed and the fact that I'm my own boss and my own destiny is up to me. I wouldn't go back. I couldn't go back. I'm unemployable, I would suggest. And let's hope I never need to be employed, having said that.
So I think we've got time for one more caller today.
Great.
Let me just see. I think we've got Malcolm.
Oh, good.
Is it Malcolm is going to be calling in? So, hello, Malcolm. Welcome to Corporate Conundrums. How can we help you today?
Hi, Malcolm.
Hi there. This is Malcolm Curry here, and I'm hoping I've got a conundrum for you that will hopefully be something that's useful to discuss. I've got a business that revolves around dispute resolution, mediation, and the whole interaction between companies and the people that work for them. Now, there's something on which I have a view, but I'd be interested on your thoughts, which is really around the whole area of how businesses should work to reintegrate and reestablish employees when they've been through a disciplinary process, a grievance or a capability procedure, something like that. But regardless of the outcome, which may be positive or negative, it's quite stressful and upsetting for them. And so the question is, how can they return to being more engaged, more productive members of the team?
Interesting. It's probably, you were saying, stressful for the person who is going through the disciplinary. It's probably equally as stressful for the people who are doing the disciplinary. So that's quite an interesting dynamic as well. Nicola,
absolutely.
Do you want to kick off with that one?
I feel part of this is about starting a step earlier in the process. I think traditionally the perception of going through a disciplinary is that people think that if I'm in the disciplinary process, my employer wants me out.
Yes.
And so the expectation going through the whole thing is negative. And if if somehow I succeed in my disciplinary and I'm still here, I've now got to deal with these people who really wanted to get rid of me. Now, that's not actually the reality of what people want to get out of a disciplinary. The aim, of course, is you've got a whole person, but there's a specific element you'd like to tackle of performance that you can then hopefully work with that person to get a positive outcome to then move forward together. So there's something to do with positioning that type of process earlier in the employment cycle, where people get to understand that it's not such a horrible event that you can't come back from. Because I think the perception is once you decide to go down that route, or once an employer takes you down that route, you've got a path of no return.
You're pigeonholed.
Yes.
Almost. Yes.
That kind of stigma, perhaps, even.
Yes.
And I was reflecting that if it were me coming out of a disciplinary, I would be worried about people talking about me and people not wanting to now talk to me, and I'd be labelled as that's that person who's just had a disciplinary. And so I think it's really important to embrace that person the minute that they come out of that process, and that the team, and particularly the manager that's managed them through that process, immediately engages them.
Yes.
You know, as somebody walks in the door, it's, hello, Nicola, great to see you today. How are you? Let's have a talk about what you're going to be working on today. And it's a positive environment, trying to really bring somebody back.
Or even more than that, even actually taking the elephant out of the room and saying, understand that you've just been through a procedure that might have been difficult for you, but let's wipe the slate clean now and move forward. And this is where we want to be going. So, not keep it all under wraps, not sort of Chinese whispers behind the person, but just bring the elephant out of the room and actually say, understand it's been a difficult process going through that, but it was hopefully to the advantage of all parties, and now let's move forward on a positive note.
Okay. Can I therefore ask a supplementary in relation to that?
Indeed.
Which is in relation to grievances in particular. Because certainly, I've guided many people through raising grievances, and I've supported them in doing that as part of my earlier career. And it's actually relatively unusual for a grievance to be upheld. Yet very often the person doesn't actually really believe that their grievance shouldn't have been upheld.
Right.
So do you see a material difference in the way you then deal with that person and reintegrating them to the team?
So the difference between the person offering a grievance and the company doing a disciplinary, and the relationship between how either individual integrates into the organisation thereafter. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I mean, there is a material difference from where I'm sitting in terms of if it's a disciplinary that's raised by the company and then comes to a conclusion, whether it's, there is a penalty or there's not a penalty. But when the individual has felt aggrieved enough to reach a point where they will raise a grievance, and I have to say one of the problems I think that there is that an awful lot of people see raising a grievance as something that's quite an aggressive act towards their employer. So they often only do so when they feel they have no alternative. I'm not saying I don't think it should be like that, but that's often the way people see it. So especially if their grievance is then not upheld, how do you actually draw that person back in and give them closure? Yeah,
so again, Nicola was talking about positioning. How I would reconcile that would be to get a handle on the grievance, or on the person and the reason behind the grievance before it happened, and try and balance where that's come from and look to getting resolution from the step before, if you like. So actually looking at, okay, this person has gone through a formal grievance procedure, let's have a look at what it is, and was there, although the company hasn't obviously upheld it, but there still must be something in that person's mind that took them down that course of action. So it's very much looking at the thought process process or that person's mindset as to why they felt there was a grievance, and how you can actually unpick that. Because otherwise, if you don't unpick it, I can't see how they would ever feel part of the organisation again, because it'll constantly be a chip in their shoulder that hasn't ever been removed or dealt with. So it's a step before that, as far as I can. Well, that's what I would see. What about you?
Well, when somebody has a feeling, if they feel something, then they still feel that.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Just because the company doesn't agree doesn't mean that the person's going to feel any different. So I can really see how this is a significant challenge in the workplace.
Yeah.
And perhaps the positioning of a grievance needs to be, similarly needs to be made that this is a completely normal thing for people to go through. If you have a concern, then we have these processes, and you're welcomed in a way. So it shows that the employer has an openness to listen. And perhaps there's a way of then saying, well, we're not prepared to uphold the grievance because we actually disagree that this, whatever it was that we've done, happened.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we need to say we recognise that you feel that that's what happened, and we want to work with you. So we have to use that language. We want to work with you to find a way to make sure that you feel as welcome in this, because we're really keen to still have you as a member of the team. There's a lot of it's about language,
and
then the physical positioning and the spending time with somebody, rather than the avoiding them and trying to avoid having that difficult conversation. It's more, let's bring it up front. I think you mentioned elephant in the room, and I think that's absolutely it. Let's just
bring it out into the open. What about you, Malcolm? Have you any additional thoughts?
No, I mean, I have to say I would come from a fairly similar position to what you've just been explaining from both of you, in that I think there is definitely scope for earlier intervention. I actually think an awful lot of grievances that I've seen, and actually a fair number of the disciplinaries that I've seen, have actually arisen from not giving the managers the tool set that they need in order to actually be able to avoid those things in the first place. And that possibly an area that needs a bit of focus is actually development of management skills, in order to avoid the problem from growing in the first place.
Well,
and continually topping those up.
I completely agree. I think there's so many people that get into a people leadership situation in organizations now, and they don't have the tools. They don't really know how to relate properly to their team and to their direct reports or their staff. And I think what you just said is absolutely fundamental. It's making sure that leaders have leadership tools in their tool bag to be able to deal with all different situations. Interesting. Thanks very much for the call, Malcolm. It's
more than welcome. More than welcome.
Food for thought, and I hope just shooting the breeze with that question has given you some other directions to have a think about with regard to what you're already doing.
Absolutely. Very useful. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for calling, Malcolm. Bye for now.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Yeah, I think grievance and disciplinary must be a huge issue for many different organisations. And the other calls?
Well, we've had some, again, a complete variety of calls. We've had Louise, who was looking for advice on how to be confident, how not to err or
Hopefully we've not done too much of that.
We had Kevin, who was looking at teams, diversity, the them and us between team dynamics, and how to make sure that in a corporate...
Not siloed, how they bring them more together,
And then we had our other Louise,
okay.
And who was really looking at how to engage remote employees.
Yes. Hopefully the advice we gave Louise was salient. I think she took away quite a lot from the conversation, I believe.
I think so. I think you're right. Then we had Beverly.
Yes, not Marjorie. It was Beverly. I think originally we did a first take and we got the name wrong, and it was Marjorie. When she phoned, I think we had to do a second take. So just if you
not
see
all of us are perfect.
If you see it being cut, that's why.
And she's really looking at when is the time to make the jump.
Yes.
When to go independent, when not to be in that permanent role.
And I can't wait to see whether or not she actually, in the imminent future, does take the jump, leap into self-employment and entrepreneurship.
And then we finished up with Malcolm, of course, with grievances and how to manage reintegrating staff members into the organisation.
Yes. Grievance, and as I said, grievance is an area. So, Nicola,
Wendy,
I think I would like to challenge the group that are listening, the audience, the world who's out there, to do something next time they're feeling lacking in confidence, or they're needing a little bit more oomph in their presentation, or potentially going into a meeting that they feel overwhelmed. I would like you to do a power pose. Monopolize as much space as you possibly can with your power pose and see the effect it has. Guaranteed, if you do it for 2 minutes, it will change your mindset. So try that at home, and I'll be interested with any feedback on our Facebook page.
We'd love to see some photographs of course, you practicing your power pose.
That would be
great.
Do
post them on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/corporate conundrum. Also, drop us a line through PM messaging if you'd like to perhaps feature on our next podcast, or ask us any specific questions about your business and see if we could be able to help you with your corporate conundrum.
That would be great. And I think that is a goodbye from her.
And a goodbye from her. And a goodbye from us.
Wish you well. Bye. Till next time. Bye.